Hello, hello. Louder than I thought. Excuse me. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Cozy and Dry Iron Trail Motors Event Center. Thanks for finding your way here. As always, we will start with the Star Spangled Banner. If you are able, please stand and face the flag. So far, the band has practiced in here once this year and a couple times before, and we've taken to calling it the Iron Trail Motors Cathedral because it echoes so nice in here. So that's an extra treat. Our first piece this evening is The Gallant Seventh by John Philip Sousa. This was Sousa's 101st march that he wrote, and it premiered in 1922. The 7th Regiment Army Band accompanied Sousa's ensemble for the original performance. During the outbreak of World War I, several of Sousa's band members enlisted in this 7th Regiment, and they reached out to their former bandmaster and asked if he could write a march for their regiment, and he happily obliged. The Gallant Seventh. Our next piece is called Salvation, is created by Pavel Chesnikov. Chesnikov was a Russian composer, and this piece was written in 1912 originally as a choral piece for a Russian Orthodox church service. It was one of the last religious pieces written before the Soviet government banned religious works, and it forced him to only write secular or worldly works. The sad thing is that Chesnikov never got to hear this piece performed himself. He passed away before he could. But his children were able to attend the premiere performance in his stead. And since that time, it has become a standard of the band repertoire. And it's going to sound really good in here. Salvation is created. We're going to change it up on you here with our next piece. Yagibushi by Nahiro Iwai has become one of my favorites over the last couple of years. It's a traditional Japanese folk song from the Gunma Prefecture, which is in central Japan. If I had to look for it on a map, I probably couldn't tell you what it is. But that's where it's from. Nahiro Iwai is a member of the Tokyo Kasai Wind Orchestra. It's a professional band in Japan, which is arguably one of the most talented in the world. Its inaugural conductor was Frederick Fennell, and if that name sounds familiar to you, it should. Fennell is the guy who is largely responsible for arranging and editing all of the Sousa marches that we play. All the good arrangements we have, they have Fennell on them. He's kind of the expert on Sousa, or at least he was. But he was the inaugural conductor of this group. You may not know that concert band is a very, very popular activity in Japan, and their groups are usually excellent. So, hope you enjoy listening to Yagibushi. The next piece is different yet from all the others. Boy, we got a nice variety of music here for you tonight, and the best is yet to come, trust me. The next piece, Danny Elfman, Music in the Dark. Elfman, of course, is a film composer, very famous, very successful, one of the good ones. He has written scores for over 100 films, plus additional works for TV, stage, and just regular old concert works. Elfman is highly awarded, 4 Oscar nominations, 3 Emmy Awards, a Grammy, 7 Saturn Awards for Best Music, and the Max Steiner Film Music Achievement Award in 2017. Max Steiner, remember that name from last week? If you were here last week. He frequently writes for directors Tim Burton and Sam Raimi, which these 4 films that are featured are from these directors. The 4 films that you will hear in this arrangement, The Nightmare Before Christmas, Edward Scissorhands, Beetlejuice, and Spider-Man, the 2002 version of Spider-Man. Hope you enjoy it. It's a lot of fun to play. Hope you enjoy listening to it as well. Next up, we will have our favorite guest conductor who's here every season. He is a Virginia High School graduate, a strong supporter of bands and music in general across the Iron Range. Please join me in welcoming our favorite Californian, Bob Burnstill, to the podium.
Well, it's great to be back, and this is probably a surprise. We're reversing the next two songs that I will be doing. So we're doing the March first, and Dan's solo, Tico Tico, second. Well, thank you, because I forgot that. So let's see. This guy, Alford, who wrote the March, is the British John Philip Sousa. And even though we don't know the name, he didn't like it, I guess, or he liked it better than his given name. His given name was Frederick Joseph Ricketts. But probably by the time he wanted to use it, he'd used Kenneth Alford and been so successful that he didn't dare change it to something else. So you'll for sure know the most famous march this guy wrote, which was Colonel Bogey March, the theme from the Bridge Over the River Kwai. So, since I knew you'd all know that, I thought let's do one that maybe you don't know, a second most famous march, which is this Army of the Nile. It was in celebration of the British forces in Egypt that stopped the progress of the Axis powers. So here we go, Kenneth Alford's Army of the Nile March. Okay, well now you're in for a treat. Our own Dan Melby is going to come out here and wow us with his euphonium solo of Tico Tico. And you know, this was popularized by a gal named, who was the famous organist of the 40s on the Hammond organ? Ethel Smith. She played this thing on the organ in spiked high heels, which is very tough to do. Dan will not be wearing spiked high heels. But you know, she had 10 fingers and 2 feet to play this thing in, and he's got 3 fingers and maybe a 4th sometimes. So let's enjoy it. This is now a popular novelty number played by everybody. Daniel Barenboim with the Berliner Philharmonic, and even the United States Marine Band has performances of this. So I get out of breath when I conduct and talk. Occupational hazard. Okay, Tico Tico and Daniel Melby. Terrific. And now for his encore. Okay, let's, that for a great performance, thank you, Dan. And let's welcome Bill Lovato to the podium, please.
How do you follow an act like that? I don't know if you noticed or not, but no music, it's all memorized and fast notes. It's just amazing. You can hardly wait for the next Nashua Keewatin High School band concert and hear what he does with them. So good luck, Dan. We'll start this next section of the concert off with something that you've heard if you happen to watch the New Year's Eve or 4th of July type of things from Vienna. It's called Trish Trash, and it's actually Viennese for chit chat or gossip. So if you remember back in the 50s when a lot of people used to stand on the street corners around here and talk a lot. I always notice a lot of old guys doing it, you know, and back and forth and talking and just having fun. And that's basically what this is. So if you picture downtown Vienna with a pile of people chatting on every street corner, that's what Trish Trash is. It's a Johann Strauss piece, of course, and this was arranged by a very famous arranger named Alfred Reed. This was probably in the 1800s when they would have been doing this. So enjoy Trish Trash.
little change of pace. We're going to do a tune that everybody's familiar with called St. Louis Blues by W.C. Handy, or actually known as the father of the blues. This was first published in 1914, and the person I always think of playing is Louis Armstrong. We have our own Louis Armstrong here. Marie Frieda's playing the melody for you to start it off, and then the whole section takes it off. So, St. Louis Blues. I really appreciate you people showing up here tonight at our auditorium here. Funny thing is that 10 after 6 tonight, or 6 o'clock is our rule, you know. 10 after 6, Mason here and I were looking, and Ryan was down at the baseball game, and I think we better move. So I dialed Brian, our Parks Director here. Brian, any chance we could move, because you realize now all the stands are up at the park at 10 after 6. So in that much time, the person that works here had the truck up there and loaded the stands, and we got them down here. Everybody pitched in and grabbed and got it set up, and we started on time. I can't believe it. I figured 10, 15 after 7, maybe we'd be ready to go, but what a deal. And this is, doesn't happen often that either it's pouring or, yeah, what a crew. And how our concert was featured tonight with the front page of the Mesaba Daily. That was a nice tribute. Thanks Ruth and Linda Tyson for doing that, and Hometown Focus also does just such a great job of publicizing these concerts, and we wouldn't want anybody to miss Daniel playing like that, so, you know. And anyhow, Tico Tico is pretty famous in many areas and of some countries, and what happened to me, and I hope it happens to you, is kind of a punishment, kind of like, you know, I don't know if you know what earworms are. Earworms are when your ears are hearing things and you keep hearing a song over and over and over. Well, for the last 2 days, that's what's kept my feet moving, you know, to Tico Tico. That happens with a different song each concert. We're going to continue our concert with Frank Sinatra tune. It's called Sinatra in Concert. It's a really nice arrangement by Jerry Noah. Of course, Sinatra is the chairman of the board, or Blue Eyes, all the different names he's called by. And one of the fun things about doing these concerts is, Ryan and I have to do some research, you know, and Google and whatever else to find some things to tell you, pertinent things about the deal and about the tunes. And I thought the greatest part about the Sinatra thing that what I read in there was he was buried with a pack of Camels and a bottle of Jack Daniels. Whether it's true or not, I never checked, but I thought that was just great. You're going to hear the theme from New York, New York. It was a very good year. The Lady is a Tramp, and My Way. And here's so beautiful, My Way. Just one little sidelight, I have to tell the story. But some of you are old enough to remember the Italian festivals in Eveleth, when they used to always bring up Name Entertainment at the Eveleth Hippodrome, and it was just it was sponsored by the Italian Catholic Church, the Immaculate Conception Church in Eveleth, which no longer is, but the grotto is still there, that beautiful rock grotto. And they used to have a big spaghetti supper there, and they would have pizza and all kinds of stuff, and it was pretty. Then on one, they had a Queen contest, and one night they would have the concert. Well, anyhow, these priests that came up, they were from Chicago, and you know the reputation of Chicago of things going on way back in the 50s and that. So anyhow, supposedly Father Giulio had lined up Frank Sinatra to come and be the entertainment. Imagine that. And the last minute he came up with an excuse that he couldn't make it, but he sent Tony Bennett. So, yeah, and he did a fantastic concert. It was just great. So, my Sinatra story. So if you haven't thought about what else there is to do in the summer besides come to Virginia City Band concerts, you know that the Northern Lights Music Festival that comes around every summer is about to come upon us. And they have a very, very full schedule. If you walk downtown Virginia and many other places, I see posters all over the place. Probably the premier event of the thing will be the three times they do the Marriage of Figaro, the opera, once in Aurora at Mesabi East, and once in Chisholm, and once in...
No, it changed from Chisholm because of construction. It's going to be at Rock Ridge.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, Bart is the chairperson of that group, and the one is, other than what you see on the poster, that the second one, the Saturday, right?
Sunday.
Sunday concert will be not in Chisholm. Chisholm is under construction. I was over there, and I'll tell you, it's under construction. It's going to be at Rock Ridge High School. So change. Here, in my mind, I had thinking Chisholm, but I know that they're doing some major renovation there. So anyhow, there's many, many other events that go on besides the opera. But if you don't get around to seeing the poster, and you get on the computer or whatever, northernlightsmusic.org, and the whole schedule is on there. There'll be some fantastic worldwide events that you would want to see there. So we're going to remind you that next week is our 4th of July concert, and where we do all patriotic type music. And we made a change. Ryan and I made a decision. The 3rd of July is just impossible. We have band directors out here that are going to be marching parades and stuff on the Thursday night, and so we're making an attempt. We're going to do it on Wednesday night. So the concert next week will be on Wednesday night, same time, hopefully up in the park. But remember that. So we'll have that in the paper also so that you see that. But Wednesday night. I guess the highlight of the night is when you get to hear the Piccolos playing Stars and Stripes Forever. So make sure you don't miss that. Thanks for coming tonight. And we're going to conclude tonight's program with a very, very popular thing. It's we don't have quite 76, but we have 3 trombones. 76 trombones, a Meredith Willson tune from the Music Man. The first time it was ever performed was as I read, was in 1957. If you remember Robert Preston and River City and Marion the Librarian and the whole works. So see you next week on Wednesday night. 76 trombones.